Welcome to Throwback Thursday. This is a second airing of podcasts that were recorded, several years ago, late 2009 to be exact. I will interject throughout the podcast and have comments, not necessarily making it current, but hopefully making it a little bit more bearable to listen to. This may go down as yet another one of my bad ideas. But in the meantime, thank you for tuning in to Vicis Interimo 1.2. Welcome to 30 Minutes to Kill. Thank you for joining me on 30 Minutes to Kill. The plan here is to review a horror movie and maybe move on to a couple other sections. These things might change as we go along, but the plan here is to start out with a brief movie review and then move on to a couple other sections. The next one being, for now, it's called Garbage In, Garbage Out. If you listen to the Horophilia podcast, you know those guys do a What You Been Watching segment. Okay, so we're about 1 minute into the podcast, and I'm ready to drive knitting needles into my ears to make it stop. I hope you folks can stick it out and appreciate how far we've come with the podcast. And in this case, I'll be going into maybe some of the things that I'm either watching on TV, maybe some non-horror movies that I might have enjoyed or caught at the theater, as well as what books I may be reading and or listening to. I work at a job where I sit at a desk most of the day, so while I'm there, I'm able to listen to audiobooks, so I try to get as many unabridged recordings as I can. And, of course, I'm listening to podcasts all through the day. But that would be the next segment, and then possibly the final segment would be, for now, titled The Horror Within. And I'm thinking maybe I would share some personal experiences of horror and the macabre. That might just get weird and depressing, though, so I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But again, thanks for joining me, 30 Minutes to Kill. Let's try to wrap this up in the next 30 minutes. Thanks again. Oh my gosh, are you still here? I sound so timid and hesitant and unsure of everything that I'm saying. I must be unsure because I'm repeating everything at least twice, it seems. Oh man, I'm sorry for putting you guys through this. Okay, let's just jump right into our first movie, The Haunting in Connecticut. I'm going to read a little bit of the synopsis that, I don't know, it's plagiarized from somewhere on the net, probably from Wikipedia. But anyhow, it says it's set in 1987, and the story centers around a family, the oldest boy of which is being treated for cancer at a hospital in upstate Connecticut. And after seeing the effect of the long commute that they have on the family, they decide that it's in their best interest for them to rent a house that's near the hospital where the kid's getting treatment. Through a series of events, they find out that it was previously a funeral home, and that the bodies were actually treated, it turns out, in the room that the boy has selected to be his bedroom there in the basement. that's kind of a general overview of it. And from there, what did I think about the movie? It wasn't a bad movie. I enjoyed it. Can I say the word a few more times? I'm sure I can. Unbelievable how bad this is, and how do we manage to get 300 episodes? I'm pretty sure that was thanks to me bringing Lori on board here. Again, thanks for sticking it out this far. There was a few problems that I had with it. I guess I'd say that the movie was, I'd give it about a 4 out of 5, or maybe an 8 out of 10 if I was going to go that way. There was a lot of things that I liked, a few things that I didn't. Too many jump scares seems to be the complaint that most people have with it. And I felt that too. When I was watching it, it was very unevenly paced. I thought with the scary images that they had, some kind of frightening things there to see, they probably could have used that to build a little bit more tension in the movie. It starts off slowly, you get a jump scare, then it goes back to being slow, then there's another jump scare. Then when you kind of find out what's going on or what's happened in the house or that type of thing, all that information comes at you in just a rush, and then it kind of slows down a little bit and ends then with a kind of fast-paced climax. I don't want to put any spoilers in here, but as the movie draws to a close, it really picks up speed, I thought. A couple of other things. I know it was, again, supposed to be based on a true story, but it kind of felt like a cop-out to me with the kid being sick. And I mean, if that's the way it happened, that's the way it happened. But the fact was, they spent a lot of time. You kind of felt bad for him, and oh, gee, isn't this terrible that he's suffering? And I feel I'm suffering, and I'm probably making you guys suffer too. What happens? I mean, you learn this early on, is he starts seeing things and kind of having hallucinations, and they've warned him that this might happen with the treatment that he's getting. So of course he doesn't want to tell them when he starts seeing things, because they feel that they'll discontinue the treatments if they think there's something wrong. So to me, it just kind of seems like that was a little bit of a cop-out with him being sick like that. However, like I said, if that's what happened in the movie, or what happened actually, then, I can understand it. But it brings me to another point where the movie was PG-13, so I always feel that PG-13 movies hold back just a little bit, and not that a PG-13 movie can't work. They can, and the best movies like that are generally the horror movies that are ghost stories, or sometimes possession movies. This seems to have a little bit of both in it. My suggestion would be, watch this with somebody else that is into possession movies or ghost stories. That certainly can add to it, because there is a lot of creepy visuals there and things to make you cringe and go, ooh. But generally speaking, like I said, I liked it, but I had a few reservations about it. Just to go back to what I was saying just a moment ago there. Oh my God, do we have to go back? I can't believe how bad this is. I guess the main reason that I'm actually going back and listening to this and playing it for you folks, those of you that haven't tuned out already, is I guess you want to, at least I'm appreciating exactly how far the podcast has come. It's come a mighty long ways. I don't think a movie has to be R to be scary, but I do think that it needs Certain movies need that. An example of a movie that didn't work for me because it was PG would be Aliens versus Predator. That movie just killed me, and not because I'm a gorehound. I don't necessarily have to see the knives going into the body or the severed hand being chopped off or the tongue being ripped out of somebody. I do believe that a lot of times that can just be left to the imagination and can be that much more intense for not having seen it on the screen. But in the example of Alien versus Predator, it was distracting because they did cut away at those points. So that's a example of a movie that I don't think that they needed to dumb down or to weaken just to get a broader audience. But again, for me, it's always about the story. That's what I'm interested in. And I'm not into torture porn myself. I don't care to watch it. But I don't care how gory a scene is either, if I'm watching something and, there's lots of blood and gore going on and stuff. If it serves the story, then it's great. I don't know. I've heard a couple of people referring to Saw, maybe some of the later Saw movies, but referring to the early Saw movies as being torture porn. And for me, that wasn't torture porn because, well, you had a way out. It may have been a gruesome way out, but there was a way out, and it wasn't just about, stringing up these bodies and watching people getting ripped apart and stuff. That's just not for me. I'm not making a judgment call. I'm just saying that the types of movies I enjoy generally have a good, strong storyline, and I don't care about the violence if it serves the story. Another movie that I watched recently and that I may be talking about either on this podcast or another one is Lord of Illusions. And when the idea first came up for me to do a review or to discuss Lord of Illusions, the first thing that popped into my head was, gee, is that really a horror movie? I don't know. I went back and watched it, and there's only maybe half a dozen rather gruesome deaths. There's a few that are left to the imagination. But yeah, it turns out there's some definite elements that would be considered horror in there, but in my mind, I just kind of glazed over them because they all seemed to fit in the story. But at any rate, I realize I'm kind of going off on a tangent there. Getting back to A Haunting in Connecticut. This is where the spoiler comes in, and you don't need to worry about zipping ahead in your podcast or anything. If this is a spoiler, it's only a spoiler if you choose to be. I guess look at it as a homework assignment, if you will. What spoiled this movie for me was something that I had actually read in The Secret Life of Houdini, The Making of America's First Superhero. It's a book by William Kalush, and I believe he collaborated with somebody else on that also. But it's a great book. Well, I'm interested in it, of course, because I'm into magic as well as supernatural and stuff. I mean, interested in those subjects. So there's some things that he talks about that goes back to Houdini's trying to contact his mother, reaching out to mediums and trying to make contact with the other side. There's a few interesting things in that book that I think if you read it, it would be interesting and maybe change your opinion possibly depending on how you felt about spirit mediums and the idea of contacting the other side and whether there's an afterlife or not. I personally am a spiritual person, but I'm also a skeptic. And I say spiritual, not religious. And I make that distinction because sometimes people get those things confused. In my case, well, we won't get into all that stuff, but I am also a skeptic, and so I believe that certain things may be possible. I still approach them from a